The Roman Empire's well-defined dress code meant that you could tell a person's rank, and often their profession, by the clothes they wore. A signature look for those of senatorial rank was a purple stripe on one's toga, which, strictly, was forbidden to anyone not in this elite group. Well-off women had a wonderful range of materials to choose from. Intricate lace and expensive coloured threads woven in complicated patterns. Spangled dresses were made by lavishly weaving real gold into the thread. Some materials were so sheer they were virtually transparent and could be worn as head veils by women who didn't want to obscure their expensive hairstyles. Conspicuous wealth was common. Juvenal, a satirical comic from the 2nd century AD, complained that these rich extravagancies actually made them ugly, like women who encircles her neck with green emeralds and fastens huge pearls to her elongated ears. The enormous amount of money spent on fashion was scandalous by any standard, and believers weren't immune to this temptation. Paul urges believers to dress modestly and warns them against expensive hairdos and jewellery and clothing. Peter writes about this to believers living among Gentiles, and specifically to those in Rome. He warns women not to concern themselves with outward beauty and making an impression by braided hair, gold, jewellery and fine clothes. A few believers today meticulously obey the New Testament commands on fashion, such as the Amish, who avoid all ostentatious jewellery and perms. Even buttons are frowned on. I love it that they can compliment each other by saying, "You look plain today." The Old Testament is surprisingly critical of rich people flaunting their jewellery. Isaiah complains that the women of Zion are haughty, walking along with outstretched necks, flirting with their eyes, strutting along with swaying hips, with ornaments jingling on their ankles. And says, "The Lord will snatch away their finery, the bangles, their headbands, their crescent necklaces, their earrings and bracelets and veils, their headdresses and anklets and sashes, the perfume bottles and charms, the signet rings, the nose rings, the fine robes and the capes and cloaks, the purses and mirrors and the linen garments and tiaras and shawls." Amos calls them cows of Bashan, who oppress the poor and crush the needy, and say to their husbands, "Bring us some drinks." Most of the church has decided that none of these commands are timeless. That is, we can ignore them now. These rules mirror the culture that they were created for, which makes it likely that they aren't timeless commands. While we can ignore these specific commands, we shouldn't forget that they had a purpose, and God's purpose is always a timeless message for us. What concerned Peter and Paul mostly were displays of ostentatious wealth that included wearing expensive jewellery, clothes and hairstyles, as well as demonstrating a worldly concern with outward beauty rather than inner holiness. And it showed that these women and men had little concern for the poor and needy. James too has some cutting remarks for believers who show favouritism to the richly dressed over the poor. If the apostles were addressing today's church, they might have included warning about flashy cars, the best phones, and homes expensively designed to impress. This was about far more than fashion. Peter and Paul were criticizing all types of selfish squandering. It's a message that urges us to make sure we remember where our real treasure is. God bless.